Okay guys, welcome to the Saga Motorsports YouTube channel. Today we are here with Ryan Ritchie and we are speaking of car controls and car control. Ryan, what is car control?
Car control is where you manage the weight transfer of the car around a track. Steering, you got brake, and you got throttle. That's all you got. So, you know, if you're going into a slow speed corner, you do a certain thing. If you're going to a high speed corner, you do a certain thing. Depending on track conditions, depending on tires, it depends on are you coming out of a slow corner or any corner to a straightaway, or are you going to a complex series of turns? Because all of that will determine how much input you need to give the car to get the car around at the fastest minimum speed you can do, right? And so the name of the game here is really how to up your minimum speed throughout the entire lap to really better your times.
Yeah, and minimum speed is one of the biggest factors to try to keep on the higher level. But I'm going to go back to the three controls: steering and both of the pedals that you have underneath you. Now, if you were to prioritize them, how would you list them from most important to least important? They're all important, obviously, right? But,
yeah.
But some do more, and I think this is going to be maybe controversial for people. How would you list them?
I would list them brake first, steering second, throttle third. Mainly because you can gain and lose a lot of time with braking. You can use braking a lot to help with rotation, to help with setting up a corner. Like you mentioned, you can compromise one corner to gain on another part of, maybe you're in a complex of turns. So giving up a little bit of speed in the initial part may help you with that exit out to maybe a long straightaway. And really, I mean, you know, for me personally, it's all about how to squeeze the throttle to not get the rear end out of shape is really all I'm really worried about. There's not, you can do some things with throttle, say in carousel turns, things like that. But for the most part, I feel braking is the by far hardest. And then the steering wheel really is just about, well, how much can I put in to make the car turn a certain way. The weight transfer, I feel, really happens mostly with the brake.
I think you're absolutely correct, but I am gonna flip the last two. For me, it's brakes, and then I think it'd be, you said steering then throttle, right? Mm-hmm. I think I'm gonna flip those two. I've always said this to a lot of people. I think the steering wheel kind of just suggests the car where it needs to go, right? But you really put the car with the pedals. Now, the reason I put the brakes first is because you use the brakes to turn, like you said, you use the brakes to turn the car to find the balance of the car. I feel like, at least in the modern Porsches on throttle, it isn't as big as a worry, just because we have such good aids. Yep. And we already spoke about aids. Some of us love them, some of us don't. If you're a race car driver, apparently you don't like them, but yeah, that's my thought on it. The brakes, it's the most important thing. Why is that brake pedal so important?
Yeah, so I feel there's two stages of braking. So you have the initial brake. You need to slow down the car to a certain speed before you can make the turn. That's where how much do you slow down, right? I mean, you can maybe have a deeper brake. You can have a earlier brake with less pressure and kind of squeeze the brake as you go into the braking zone. That's kind of the first phase. And then you get into the second phase is, well, what corner am I going into? Is it a fast corner? Is it a slow corner? Is it, you know, if I'm just brushing the brake, you're not really putting all the weight on the front end. So you have to see, okay, well, how can I, you know, manipulate the steering and the throttle through a fast corner with brushing of the brake to get through the corner? Whereas you're going through a very tight corner, say turn 12 at Coda, which is after the back straight. That's the fastest part of the track, heavy brake. So you can really lean on the brake to what's called trail braking. I think, and we discussed that before.
Yes, and we'll discuss it again.
We'll discuss it again. It's just holding that just a little bit of brake, and you know, to get you to the corner to help with that rotation. Because the slower the car is going, the more it's going to be able to rotate, right? So as you start bringing that speed down, as you're turning the wheel, as you're using the brake pedal, you got to really finely feel how much brake to want to give it, because you don't want to overslow the car. But you need to get that car to rotate. You need to get that, you need to get to the apex, and then you need to know when you can, in a very stable manner, apply throttle coming out of the corner. I feel that's kind of phase two is, okay, now you have the trail brake, where you've done all pretty much your preliminary braking, and now you want to finesse the car around the corner. So, but I would say those two phases of braking are as how I break it down. And that's kind of everything you can think about that goes in, that happens at fractions of a second through muscle memory, not through thinking. And, you know, just being able to get around that corner as fast as you can.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just go a little bit back and touch about rotation. So we all know when you're driving a car down the road, the car has springs in the front, it has springs in the rear, and I'm just trying to give simple terms so people understand what you're talking about in rotation. So if you're going 100 miles an hour, you hit the brakes, the car is now on the front springs, right? So all the weight has been transferred to the front end. So that's why Ryan keeps on saying rotation. So in braking, you're putting all the load or all the weight on the front end of the car, and you're initially going to a 10 pedal, right? And control braking involves releasing the pedal and turning, right? But by still having brakes in the car, you're keeping that weight transfer on the nose of the car. Yep. It's a super simple concept once you understand it. And the inverse works for throttle, right? So once you get in throttle, the shift weights to the back, but honestly, keeping that nose dialed with the brake pedal is very important, especially on the Porsches. Now, before we spoke of braking, I was thinking is how does a novice approach braking zones, right? And for me, it starts with what track are you at, right? Are you a track that has runoff? Are you at a track that's literally track grass, dug in G2 Motorsports Park? You cannot sometimes afford to push the braking zone. Now, all of us by nature, we all say it's our initial answer to making lap time is how far can I push this brake zone?
Yep.
Is that the correct way to approach every brake zone, or what do you think? Because in my opinion, I mean, we were once there, but I think it's definitely not the correct way to approach a zone, right? Because if you approach a zone with how late can I brake, usually you have a car that's more upset and you can't keep that transfer on the front end of the car, right? Because you're asking the car to brake and turn at the same time, and then the car's just not going to be happy at all.
Well, it's two things. So with novices, what I find is that either they brake way too early because there's just not that level of confidence in the car and the track and the grip, and they don't know what's really coming next.
And this is you in the right seat, correct?
This is me in the right seat as an instructor, right.
Okay.
And then you have some novices, I feel that it's a minority group, but there are some novices that maybe watch racing, watch IndyCar F1, they hear about late braking, they hear about you stand on the brake, 10 pedal, and so they'll go way deeper than they need to go. They'll stand on the brakes, full 10 pedal all the way down, and then they'll release the brake before they start turning, overslowed, and then they'll go around the corner at a much slower rate and then mash the gas and try to, go out. And that's, a starting point, right? But the problem with what you just mentioned about you go to 10 pedal and you're very abrupt with the inputs is that as that weight moves in the car, around the car, the more abrupt you are with those inputs, the less settled the car is. Yes. And so if you're going full brake 10, going around the corner, you let up, that very abrupt shift of the weight does not give the car any stability. It does not help you with your confidence in the car. It's either the front end's gonna push, the rear end's gonna come out, or both. And then not including the electronic aids coming in after the fact saying, well, we feel you're going to spin, so we're going to take corrective action. Yeah. And then you're like, I don't know what's going on. I have no pedals, no steering. I'm sliding sideways. I don't know why. Yeah. And so when I'm right seat as an instructor in the car, I try to have them brake earlier than later. And if they're wanting to mash the pedal to a 10, I say, okay, well, let's try earlier with less pedal. Let's start to feel the weight move through the car, where you kind of put the weight on the front end versus slamming on the front end. Okay. And then that
means like feeding brake pressure, right?
Feeding brake pressure. Imagine like a rubber ball between your foot and the pedal. You're just squeezing that rubber ball.
Really feel that car moving forward.
And so you can feel the movement. And part of the Porsche's what do they call it? Their instructional clinic that they used to have, I think, last year.
Car control clinic.
Car control clinic. Is understand that concept of weight transfer, and that you don't have to just jerk the wheel and slam on the brake or the gas. It's about you feed. It's almost like a dance of you feed one input, you feed steering, you feed brake, you feed throttle, and through that process, you're just gently moving that weight around to where you want it to be, so the car feels stable everywhere.
So one quick mention is going to be ABS. It's your anti-lock braking system. One thing you will commonly hear at the track is going to be threshold braking and threshold braking basically means to come up to a 10 pedal without going to ABS. So if you're ever in ABS in a braking zone, the car does not feel great, and it's actually extending your brake zone, because what is actually happening is the wheels are locking up, they're releasing, locking up, releasing, and when you are at threshold, which is the max capacity of braking of the vehicle, the car, those tires are spinning and braking under grip without the slip and slide. The car feels way better. It's much more composed into a corner.
Yep.
So ABS, anti-lock braking system, just keep that in the back of your mind. Ryan, on a slow speed corner, I know we have different driving styles. What are you looking for in a slow speed corner?
So I look at a reasonable braking point based on the conditions and the tires. And I know I'll probably take more of an earlier braking point, but I will ease into the brake and try to squeeze the brake in the middle of the braking zone at phase one, like I mentioned, to get the car slowed down just enough and then not overslow it, so I have plenty of room of speed to bleed off during that trail braking phase two portion that I mentioned. And so it's a lot. It's about, where do you start the braking? Where do you start to let up? How does the car feel? Is you know, am I carrying too much speed at this point and I need to squeeze a little bit more out of it during that trail braking phase two part? Maybe I squeezed up too much, and so maybe I need to ease off the trail braking, and then I have to attack that apex a little differently because now I'm not gonna have as much weight on the front end.
We talk about slow speed corner. It's literally a corner that usually has a big brake zone attached to it right before, and a slow speed corner is going to be anywhere from, just think about if you're in first or second gear in your car, that's going to be somewhere in the 30 to 50 mile an hour. These corners, the reason they're so important is you spend more time in a slow speed corner, so you spend more time braking, turning, going 30, 40 miles an hour, tracking out, than going 100 miles an hour through a sweeper, right?
Yeah.
It's just that there's more time to gain and there's therefore more time to lose. What helped me most was after we actually started looking at data and histograms. So your initial input should be going straight to just before threshold or to threshold braking. You want to picture a line where the brake pressure goes straight up, right? And then you want to keep that brake pressure, because when your car is going 150 or 120, your car is also at max aero, right? So you want to go to a 10 pedal, keep that 10 pedal, and you want to trail that off. And for me, that was very game changing, because I could kind of sit there in the car and be like, okay, 10 pedal, 10 pedal, 10 pedal. Okay, now the car can start turning. Let me start releasing. And you have it in your mind where the car is just coming off. Now, I agree 100% with you with what you said for slow corners. They're very involved. You always have to see what's next on a slow speed corner. So if you are coming up on a long straightaway, you're gonna maybe want to later apex that corner, right? That way you have a higher top speed. But if you're on a series of connected corners, maybe that first corner has to be super late, or maybe it can be early because you still have time to move over left. Yep. So it's always where you want to go. We mentioned this in another video. Sometimes you gotta, if it's a series of connected corners, you walk through them backwards. Now I want you to touch upon, you already mentioned this, but also realizing that not every brake is a 10 brake is important, right?
Yep. Yeah, really it's about, I mean, you don't have to go to a 10 brake necessarily. You can, what we call brushing the brake, you're at a 5, a 6, and you know, are you going uphill? Are you going downhill? Are you on camber, off camber? You're gonna, you know, at every track, you're gonna have those situations where you'll either have, like turn 1 at Coda, you got a lot of elevation helping with brake. So you are at a 10 pedal, it's after the straightaway, you're going very fast.
This is turn 1, yep.
But you almost have to brake less than you would at turn 12 after the back straight, which you're actually going downhill into the turn. And so those things play into it. And you know, so at turn 1, for example, another interesting variable is there's a crest, because it tops out at the turn.
Straight, yep.
And so you have to play with that. If you try to load up the front end, you put all the weight on the front end, and you're crossing that crest as you're turning, that can start upsetting the car, because now all of a sudden the front end gets light, it gets settled, but now the rear end is light, and you're loading that side of the car, the right side of the car, and that can cause a lot of problems. You have to address that. Luckily for me, my turn in is really after the crest. So mathematically, it kind of works out with the speed I'm going that I don't have to necessarily worry about that crest during mid turning. And I think really the big difference between our driving styles is I like later apex in general more, and you kind of more neutral apex.
So speaking of driving style, I have zoomed in to turn 11 here at Coda. I am the red line and Ryan is the blue line. And this is pretty much us at every slow speed corner. Ryan's always usually not deeper on the brakes, but he usually carries a straighter line in and then is always later apexing. For me, I do start grabbing sometimes, so on the brake zone, I'll start moving a little bit left. But for me, the priority is kind of getting to the apex versus, in my opinion, going deep and then doing a late apex. So my priority is getting to the apex, and then I'll figure it out on the way out. So yeah, this is just our different driving styles. Now, one thing people also have to understand, we kind of have disregarded the steering wheel, but the steering wheel is very important. Although sometimes when you're going, a good example of this is the carousel, right? So you enter the carousel 16, 17, you turn the car, you give the steering wheel, and ever since the start of time, basically everyone's like, you keep that wheel in it and you roll throttle or you move the car with throttle, right? So you're in the carousel, and because I have tried it, you can have this much wheel and you can have this much wheel in it.
Yep.
And the car will go the exact same place. The easiest way to keep turning that car is going to be for you to retreat on that throttle. The front end of that car squeezes. So steering wheel is still super important, but a lot is done with the pedals. I'm going to go back to what you said about connected corners. So late apex versus early apex versus mid apex. Maybe we can display that on the chart, what they all mean. And like we showed with me and you, is I'm usually a mid apex or early, and then you're usually late. So a big thing too that I always tell people is not why are you late apexing this? I understand a late apex is a safe apex, but in my opinion, I only late apex something if it allows me to carry the extra speed I gained on the way out into the next corner, right?
Yep.
And it's hard to understand, or sometimes it's hard to piece together, say like coming down one at Coda, right? I don't want to be too late at one at Coda because I still have to have a big lift moment through two, right? But if I had a car that has a ton of grip through two, maybe late apexing and carry that 2-3 mile an hour extra from 1 to 2 to 3, because that's going to be a big section of time. Maybe carrying that extra 3 mile an hour through all that is going to be a good chunk of time.
Yeah, I mean, so my opinion is you have either a connected corner or you have a straightaway. It's really the only two options you have, right, on a racetrack. And where you want to position the car is going to tell you, how you want to approach that corner. If it's going to be a straightaway, typically, you want a late apex because you want to get on throttle sooner, because you can carry that speed all the way down the straightaway, and that's where you really can make up a ton of time, especially slow corner, the straightaway. That's a huge. If you miss that apex, if you miss that slow corner, and you don't get on throttle fast enough, that you carry that penalty to the end of the straightaway, right, until it resets. But if you're going into a complex turn, let's say like turn 1 to turn 2, you do want to bring the car to the left after the left turn, which is turn 1. And so
you want to prioritize moving left, yes.
But as I've learned over time through various instructors and people that we drive with, is you don't want to fight the car, because the more you fight the car, the more you're going to scrub speed. You don't want to give it full wheel and fight the car to get it full left to be able to go turn right. Well, if you late apex 1, I feel like you can get left easier and not fight the car as much, get it as much left as you can, which I go like to maybe a third from the left. I usually, if I'm at speed and I'm feeling good about things, I usually cannot get the car to the left side curb to prepare for the right for turn 2. I'm usually going over as far as I can. So the late apex in that situation allows me to get more left without fighting the car, less steering input, and then get settled for the right turn.
So late apex, safe apex, and as you start getting more used to the car, more used to the track, start piecing things together, you can start moving into a mid-apex. It's just two different driving styles. I am gonna go to turn 7 at Coda. Turn 7 is a left-hander, and the reason I'm going to turn 7, it's because this goes back to weight balance. So turn 7, critically important. A lot of instructors say that even at the speeds that we're going, that just a lift gets enough front end in the car, because that's another thing, right? Sometimes you don't need to go to the brake pedal. You can just release off the throttle, and that gets you that weight transfer to the front end.
Weight, yep.
Just enough weight. Now, for me, it's a little less comfortable, so sometimes I'll go for the comfort, and I'll show that right here, where at 7, so this is me in the red, you're in the blue. I go to a super soft brake, and you do not brake into 7. I think it yields maybe the same in lap time, but it's just two different styles, right?
And feeling too, right? Maybe at that moment you
track.
had a little less grip on the front end, so you need a little brake, because that's always there for you, right? That is part of the toolbox. You do a lift and you feel like you need a little bit more, touch of a brake, a little bit more weight, and then you can go back on throttle. And so,
and we're both within a mile an hour throughout that whole section, and I dabbed a bit of brake in it, and you just lifted, turned the car. So I'm gonna continue from 7 to 8. 8 is kind of a tough one to talk about, right? Because you have to brake and keep a little bit of brake as you're going up. This is all on power here.
Yep.
Section turn 9, turn 10, and then I'm going to go into turn 11. So let's see if I can do just a video. Yes, here. So we're both carrying, about the same speed. Maybe I got a slightly better launch, but could be definitely.
I believe you were on gas a little bit sooner at leaving 8 than I was. Yeah. Which, again, a great example of just a little bit extra throttle at that point. Now you're a couple mile an hour faster than me through the entire straight, even though 10 isn't a straight. It's a kink, but it's full throttle, and you carried that all the way through to 11.
Correct. Yeah, so I want to show people what we were talking about driving styles, because I know we showed them on the histogram, but I want to show them here so they have a direct look, or kind of in our seat. So we both go to a pretty big brake pedal, and as we can see here, I'm already starting to yaw the car in, or already have a decent amount of steering wheel in it. So I have already grabbed the car and started to turn the car in, but we're both still carrying that trail, right? So we have the trail, we both have the trail. And since I have the car that's not as well positioned on the way out, I have to carry the brake longer, right? Since I am earlier, I have to keep that car rotating, while you already have kind of a more, not a straight shot, but you have a better
well, I did the rotation a little quicker, and then because I'm a slower mile an hour than you, but I did get the car rotated more, so as I'm leaving the apex, I'm more in a straight line.
Yeah, and again, here, we're both around the same throttle percentage. I'm at 55, you're at 57, but you start climbing way quicker, right? Because why? Because you rotated the car on entry, and you have a straighter shot on exit. Then does this lead to any difference in mile an hour? Like I said, this could be very conditioned. So just on the track out 60, I'm at 58. I think the conditions were better when I was driving the car, so we can't compare the straightaway. But we will continue on to turn 12. So let's look at turn 12. I think this one, for some reason, you shocked me, as in you turned in earlier. Oh, because that's not your style. But
that's consistency part of it. Yeah.
No, but you're going super quick here. So we both go to a 10 pedal, and we both start turning about the same. This is another one that's super tricky, because the track falls away, then it comes back to you, and on the coming back to you on the way back up, you get that front end again. So
there's a bump at the apex.
There's a bump, yes.
If you hit it right, it can help. Instead of destabilize the car, you can kind of really hit that bump.
Yeah, and we go back to, I think you had a way better composed car, so I went to less of an initial brake, and I had to keep a lot of brake in the car. It's probably like 50% here, and you have a little bit less. So I have a less composed car at the apex, and look at you, you're already rolling throttle on the way out earlier. Even though you kind of hesitated at the end, right? What's going on?
Well, it's that track out. I crossed over the curbing, so I didn't want to go too far off.
Yeah, and this is another one, turn 13 at Coda. I am in a little bit earlier, and I think you're further pointed right. It's very slight, but this can be very weather conditioned. This is turn 15, the turn that Ryan was talking about. I think Yeah, we have similar lanes. So I am a little bit further left here than you are. So I think I'm a little bit, I stay further left. So see, you have all this space here on the right. And again, it's just driving style. And I bet you're gonna be able to roll throttle earlier. Yep, on the way out.
You got traffic.
Well, I got traffic, but you didn't use the track either. So yeah, this is all driving style.
What?
Which is crazy to see.
So if asked what I would tell students when approaching a new track, in a very, I guess, a low skill level, is, you want to approach the braking zones, I guess, very conservatively. Brake sooner, try the 10 pedal, try releasing the brake a little bit. Now, understanding they may not know the concept of trail braking yet, and that's fine. But just try to get the car slowed down to a point where you feel comfortable going around the corner. I would say every time try to hit the apex. Whatever you can do to hit the apex. I'm okay if you early apex. I'm fine if you overslow the car and you're just basically, tiptoeing around the corner. But always hit the apex. Try to build that good habit of always trying to hit the apex as much as you can. And I don't care how slow you're going, you track out. You always want to track out to wherever you have to be, whether if it's a single corner, go to the curbing. If it's a complex, set of turns, then go out as far as you need to go. Try to start building that muscle memory of where do I need to be on the track at that moment. Then you're tiptoeing around the corner, do the same thing you're doing, but then do it a little later, right? Just do it a little later. And then when you start feeling like you just cannot hit that apex, you're a foot, maybe 3 feet, a car length away or car width away from the apex, then you want to start figuring out, well, there are several things we can do. You can either start backing your brake point back a little bit to see, okay, let's move it back. We've gone a little too deep. Or if you're hitting ABS, we need to move that braking point back. Or start bringing in the concept of trail braking is, okay, well, have a good pedal, but don't just release the pedal. Let's drag the brake pedal a little bit going into the corner and seeing how that works. Because if you're just working with maybe half a car width or maybe a car width away from the apex you feel a comfortable speed, the car's stable, that could all be done in the phase 2 portion of trail braking and getting up to the apex. Now, if you're doing that and you get up to maybe you're a foot off the apex, then okay, well, now I need to brake back just a little bit further. And so you have to tweak several things, I guess, approaching a corner to get that braking, to get to the apex, and then, practice soft inputs. You don't want to slam the brake, let off the brake abruptly. You don't want to slam on the throttle or let off the throttle very abruptly.
Correct.
And you also don't want to just do a 90-degree turn with the steering wheel and say, turn now. You want to ease the steering wheel and work in conjunction with the brake and the throttle. In the end, the goal is really to not think about any of this stuff anymore, right? Because as you're thinking through all these things, you're losing focus from what you're having to do, which is you need to see what's in front of you. You need to see, are there cars around me? Is there someone that maybe they lost their brakes behind me? Maybe the car in front of me lost their oil.
Going on.
There's a lot going on that you need to focus mentally on, and you need to start moving these movements with all of the inputs into muscle memory. So your mind can be freed up for other things. I mean, you have to look for, cars stopped on track. Maybe there's a car at the exit of the track that's stopped, and if you continue on, you're going to completely hit them in the back, right? You have to work around them, which would mean being in an emergency situation. So, and think through that, look at any given time, look at flag stations. Is there debris on the ground?
Something
Is there
on the asphalt?
Yellow? Is there a safety truck on track? Are there safety workers on track? And so, which is a lot. I mean, and luckily as an instructor in the car, you take on all of that, away from the driver of, okay, I'll tell you if there's any obstructions, I'll tell you if there's any, or obstacles, I'll tell you if there's a flag coming out, I'll tell you if there's debris on the road, because I'm constantly looking for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, to the point where the student concentrates on driving and the instructor kind of does puts their mind at work for the safety stuff. But we heard this from one of the event organizers, I don't remember which one, is you only have 100% of capacity, right? And a big percentage will be towards driving, but you still have to leave percentage for looking for corner workers, looking at the asphalt. Is there a car riding you? Is the car behind you that you just passed going to stop? It gets super complicated.
Yep.
Okay, Ryan, we can talk about this all day. You guys, please go ahead and let us know how you guys approach a turn on track. Whether you're a mid-apexer, a late apexer, please leave it down below.
Like, subscribe.